In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the torque sensor, which is integrated within the bottom bracket. So you have to replace the entire bottom bracket. And to remove that sensor, you need to remove the whole crank. So you need the following tools to remove the bottom bracket. First, you will need that first tool is to remove the main washer that locks the crank, and then you will need the other tool here to remove the locking washer for the chainring. You can find those tools on Amazon. Just basically search for bottom bracket tool remover. You will also need a crank extractor. This is to remove the crank, and a really large wrench, the largest one you can ever get because it will require lots of torque, and a hex key, and a screwdriver, and the multi-tool kit that comes with the bike, and you will need a grease to apply some grease on the bearings and the bottom bracket. So now I'm going to guide you how to remove the crank. So I would start from the left side of the bike, not the right side. It's easier to start from the left. So I'm going to show you how to remove the left crank arm. Let's jump to the left. Grab the hex key. You only have to remove the crank arm. That's only the thing you have to do on the left side, nothing else. It's very important that you only follow the instructions here. Don't remove anything other than the crank. So first we start with the hex key. We remove the bolt on the crank, as you see here, and then that washer, it's a bottom bracket washer, so you never want to touch that washer, only the crank. That's on the left side. So we're going to use the crank extractor. You want to unthread this, make sure that metal piece is going inside, and then start threading the crank extractor inside the pedal arm. Make sure you do it with your fingers all the way in, and then you'll bring the wrench and tighten the crank extractor all the way. Just make sure it's tight. That one has to be fully inserted. Yep, now I can tell it's all in. Now you start tightening the spindle. It's going to be super stiff in the beginning. As you tighten, it becomes easier. Again, use the largest wrench you have. Oops, that one should be already tight. Keep tightening. Sometimes what I do, if it's super tight, I'll use a larger wrench and I'll step on the pedal and, you know, give it another turn. It's really tight. So I step on the pedal again. I don't put all the weight on the kickstand. Sometimes you don't want to bend the kickstand or anything like that. It could really, you don't want to put any pressure on the kickstand. So now I got it loose, and then I go back to my wrench. Keep tightening. Now it's loose, and I can feel it's wobbling right now, the crank. I can feel it's loose. So I'm just going to undo the main crank extractor, and then that's it. I'll just pull everything apart. It's already loose. And then I'll just take the crank extractor. And that's it. We're done with the left side. So we took off the crank. Now we go to the right side. You don't want to do anything else on the left side. Now I'm going to jump to the right side and show you more details step by step. You gotta grab a hex key and start unthreading or undoing the bolt that's on the crank arm. It's a pretty simple process. And now you will get the crank extractor. We can undo it and make sure that metal piece that's popping out, it's has to go in, just in case you don't want to interfere with the bottom bracket, or it's just a safer option. So you want to thread it in clockwise. Make sure you do it with your hand or with your fingers. Do it nice and gentle. Be careful not to strip the threads. So do it nice and gentle. Make sure it's all threaded in, and then bring the wrench and start tightening the crank extractor. Make sure it's all the way in. This is really sensitive, so you have to make sure it's all the way in before you start extracting the crank. Otherwise it will strip the threads. Alright, I'm gonna grab the tool here and try to make sure it's all the way to the end. Now it's pretty much tight, so that's good. Now we start turning the spindle. This one will extract the crank, so it's going to be tough. Again, use the largest wrench. It is super stiff in the beginning, and then it will become loose and easy. The larger the better. The larger wrench the better, because it will require lots of power. Again, it's going to be hard, and then it will become easier, and then as you clockwise, it will basically come off. I don't usually use a wrench. I have another tool like that one. It's just easier, and I can apply more torque. So if you have a tool like this, or you have a larger wrench, it makes the job a lot easier. It is pretty stiff, and then again, as you start threading this spindle, it becomes easier. That means it's already loose now. Okay, so I'm gonna undo the main. Oh well, here we go. It came off. So I can just undo this one, take it off the crank arm. Yep, that's all good. Now I will remove the locking washer for the chainring. So I'm gonna use my the bottom bracket tool that I got from Amazon. So that one is a bit tricky. So to undo this one, it's gonna be clockwise. So it's the opposite way around. So you gotta be, to tighten this, it's counterclockwise, but to undo it, it's gonna be clockwise. So I'm gonna put this one in and attach it to my wrench. Sorry, the tool I have here. All right, let's do that one and give it a shot here. Again, that has to be clockwise. So I'm gonna start undoing that. Again, we only do this from the right side. We're not gonna do nothing on the left except for extracting the crank arm, nothing else. Okay, now it's loose. I already undone it. So I take this locking washer off, because that basically locks the ring. And then there we go. I will now pull out the chain ring. So I'm gonna just pull it apart and lay it down on the floor. As you see, the other crank on the left side is just like bouncing because we just took all the weight for the right side, so it's just imbalanced right now. And I'm gonna use the bottom bracket washer. So that one is gonna be also clockwise to undo it. If you have, I do have a different tool, a bit larger. Sometimes this is really stiff, so you have to stand up and put all your weight on it. But I do have a different tool. If you get a lot longer one or larger would be better. You'll see a variety of options on Amazon. I'm gonna use that tool. Basically, with the larger tools, you have more torque, more power. Makes things a lot easier. So I'm gonna apply some pressure here. Yep, got it loose right now. Again, you can use the other tool as well. It really depends what you prefer, but it's a pretty simple process. Just clockwise, take it apart. So this is the bottom bracket washer. That's the main washer. It's only from the right side. You don't want to touch the washer on the left side, never, because the one on the left side basically rotates the whole bottom bracket, and then you will shear off the wire, the torque sensor wire. It will break. So once this one, you undo that washer, you just pull it apart. See, and remember, there's a small washer here. That's really important. Don't forget to put this one back. However, not all the bikes have this washer, but if you do have this washer, you gotta put it back. I'm gonna jump to the battery bracket, the bottom side. I do want to unplug the wire of the torque sensor before we remove the bottom bracket. So we need to unplug the wire first. I'm going to use my toolkit. I'm going to use the third Allen key. The reason why I use my toolkit is just because there's weight into it, so it's easier to loosen it up. Once it's loose, I use my screwdriver. Now I got it loose, and I'll put the screwdriver to unscrew the hex key. Again, that hex key shouldn't be super tight, otherwise it will get stripped, the head of the screw. So pretty nice and gentle, get it loosened, and then it's all good. Now I'll just go to the other screw. You see that washer, locking washer here? You never want to touch this one. Never ever try to untighten, otherwise this one will rotate the bottom bracket and it will shear off the wire, so you don't want to get close to that one. So we're going to pull out the bracket. Oops, it looks like the screw is still inside. I'm gonna just take it apart. I'll just use my screwdriver. It's already loose. It looks like it came off. So you'll see a bunch of wires. I'll show you what the torque sensor wire look like. So sometimes the wire is stuck inside the plate, but I'll show you how to take it off. So this is the wire. Again, if it's stuck inside the plate, you gotta remove the top cap, but in most cases you'll be able to see the wire. That's the wire. It's a blue plug. I'm gonna just take it apart. That's the torque sensor wire, which is coming from the bottom bracket, and it should look like this. It's kind of flat. So I'm gonna go back to the bottom bracket. After removing the locking washer and the bottom bracket washer, you can just pull out the bottom bracket and you can basically see the wire you can just basically fish the wire through the frame from the other side and pull. That's the wire we just unplugged. You see the hole here? That's where you have to pull the wire. Make sure you pull nice and gently. That's the wire. We got it out and it's all good. Now we go back again. We want to replace the new torque sensor. So we're going to do everything as we did, just the opposite way around. We're going to insert the torque sensor in this direction. But before I insert, I do want to lubricate the area, especially when you have a new bottom bracket. It's not a bad idea to lubricate the bearings. It makes things easier. So just use a general grease or a specific grease for bottom bracket. Just make sure all the threads are lubricated. This way you won't have any squeaky noise while riding. Makes things smoother. I'm also gonna lubricate the bottom bracket, the hub. Just the hub or the shaft bearing, and it makes things a lot smoother, easier. No sound, no squeak. And then I'm gonna insert the bottom bracket. Prior inserting the bottom bracket, I need to put the washer. So I have to clip it in to the thread. Make sure you put the washer spacer and then the bracket washer into the bottom bracket, just like this. You see that? Yeah, it should really sit nice. And then you fish in the wire through the frame. You can basically insert from here and then pull from the other side through the frame. You can just fish it and pull. As you pull, you need to make sure the wire is really sitting, it's not tangled or anything like that. So I'm gonna just show you how. I'm pulling from the other side and I'll push. Remember that spacer or that washer has to be there, it's very important. And then I insert and pull the wire. Okay, I'm gonna just make sure the wire is sitting nice. Just gonna push and then pull, push, pull, and then I have to get this bottom bracket through the other bracket, the other side. So make sure it's going through. Yep, I got it. And then once it goes through, I push the bottom bracket all the way in and I start threading the washer. It's gonna be counterclockwise to tighten the bottom bracket. That's the opposite way. Just one thing to remind you of, that spacer washer, it's not always available on all bikes, so if it's there, you gotta use it. It's pretty simple, easy. And then I'm just gonna wipe it here. Once it's all good, you can use a tool. Okay, we got it in. I also have a large tool, it's just easier. I can use it to get a bit of torque here. This one is not going to be really super tight, just tighten to a level where you feel it's tight, and and that's it. Just gonna use that one, give it another turn, and yeah, we got it all in here. Now it's all looking good. Now I'll put the chain ring. Sometimes the chain is preventing the chainring to sit, so you gotta push the derailleur to give it more flexibility, and then we put the chain ring just like that. Now it's sitting on the bottom bracket. I'm gonna get the chain on the chain ring. Yeah, now we got it all sitting nice and great. So now we put the locking washer. This is the locking washer for the chain ring, so it's a counterclockwise. So, and then you use that tool counterclockwise, and I'm gonna just torque it. It's not super tight. I'll gotta put the pedal on the other side, because when you try to turn it, it will basically, the crank will turn. So this is a rubber cap that goes into the hole for the wire. So I'm just gonna show you where the hole is. The rubber cap basically covers the hole for the torque sensor wire. So you gotta insert into the hole and make sure it's fully inserted. You don't want to collect dirt or debris while riding. So I'm gonna put the locking washer. It's gonna be counterclockwise, and then before tightening this locking washer, you need to put the crank arm on the left side, because it will spin as you tighten. So I'm gonna step on the pedal and start tightening the crank. So counterclockwise, give it a bit of a torque here. It's all good. And again, as you see, I'm stepping on the pedal because that will spin as you tighten. Now it's all good here, and I'm gonna put the crank, the right side of the crank. So the right side would be labeled R. You can see the R letter, it's labeled R. And then you gotta put it in the opposite way of the other side. So the other side is gonna be the opposite way. If that one is the left one is up, that's gonna be down. So we're gonna insert that one on the right side and tighten the bolt. You gotta really tighten that bolt. Make sure it's tight. You wanna make it super tight. I would definitely recommend, before tightening that bolt, give it a test ride, see if it's the torque sensor is working, and then if it's all good, you can start tightening the bolt, just to avoid uh, like extracting and going through that process again, just to make sure it's working. So again, you tighten the bolts, make it really tight, and should be all good. So the last step, again, I'm gonna go put in the rubber cap. That rubber cap should seal the hole where the wire, the blue wire for the torque sensor. If you don't have a rubber cap, you can just put a silicone sealing, because you don't want to get dirt inside. So I'm gonna show you how to put this rubber sealing. You gotta insert it into the wire and then slide it down to the hole. Very simple. So now it's already sitting in the hole. That's not very clear, but you can see it's already sliding there. Just gonna push it with my fingers here, and no, that's it. It's all good. Afterwards, you'll I just want to make sure it's all good. Yep, it's I can feel it. It's sitting inside the hole. And now I want to plug the wire, align the pins, otherwise they will break. I would, after plugging the wire, give it a test before tightening the crank. I can just put the crank and just test, make sure it's all working fine, and then I can tighten the crank, and that's it. So I'm gonna put the bottom cap of the battery. Make sure the Allen screw, the Allen head goes on the side. Well, you gotta push the wires first. So the Allen, this is the Allen screw. Just push the wires so the bracket can sit well, and then you want to first tighten the regular cross head screw. That's a cross head. You can tighten this one with the screwdriver. And then once this is tightened, you can use the tighten the Allen screw. Don't over tighten the Allen screw. You don't want to strip the head, so I'll use just my regular screwdriver for now, and then after that I'll use my multi-tool, because it has more torque or force. It's kind of a little bit heavy. So when I reach an end here, I'm just gonna give it another turn. You don't want to over tight, just give it another turn, and that's it. Because if you over tight, you will strip the screw. It's kind of a sensitive one, so that's it. And we're all done here. Just a quick reminder, you see that locking washer on the left side of the bottom bracket? Don't ever get close to it, just leave it, don't undo it. Good luck.